Hello YouTube. So the other day I needed to test some fuses out, and it was actually away from my house, and somebody came up to me, and I usually test with a multimeter, and where we're at, they just had a test light, and so it got me thinking I should really probably do a video of how to test fuses just with a test light. And again, because they're easy to get. If you could go to an auto parts store, and a lot of times they'll just loan you your test light or something like that, and they're not that expensive, and you should get a good one if you work on your car anyways. Anyway, so I thought I'd make a quick video on how to use your test light to test your fuses quickly. So one nice thing about my car, my fuse box is located right next to my battery there. It's nice that Honda built it like that. It's not rocket science. You just push this little tab, opens up. They put their labels on the top, which was kind of nice, although they get weathered over time. But that being said, I'm just going to set that aside. And basically, when you think about how the car was designed when they were thinking about designing these cars at the time, you can see right here, another nice thing is you can see, I think you can see, let me kind of get up here. See, this is my ground wire, and it goes straight to ground, so you can tell that the car's concept is the negative is grounding to the chassis. And then what they're going to do with the positive terminal is they think of this as running the power to all the components, and so they'll run the power through the fuses. And so knowing that, they're trying to feed, they're thinking of it as the power going to the fuse box, passing through the fuse, going through the component, and then grounding back out, and that's how they're completing their circuit. So knowing that, all you have to do is put one end of your test light onto a ground or negative terminal, and then you probe with the positive side, which is completing the circuit for you. That's probably more confusing than it needs to be, but I'll show you that in just a second. Okay, it's starting to sprinkle, so I'm going to go kind of fast. As you can see, as I just hooked the clip to my test light up to the ground terminal, and if I take the terminal and touch it to the positive lead, it lights. So that's essentially what you're doing here. So if I go down the leads, I touch the fuse, the little tabs on the fuses. If I can, there you go. So I touch one side and it lights, and then I just touch the other little tab, and again it lights. Now let's see if I can find one that's. So these are components, without looking at the fuse box, that don't require the ignition to be on. I was hoping I'd find one. You're going to find some components just kind of going through, I can't find one. Probably on the dash. You're going to find some components that would require the ignition to be on, and they'll kind of like appear they don't work. But the idea there would be, if you found one that seemed like it was dead, you could look on your box and then see whether or not it makes sense, like the radio or something like that, or a clock, whether or not that you'd have to have the ignition on to test it out. Let's see, somebody had asked about these bigger fuses, how to test them, and I do not. Well, let me try. Well, it's kind of, I guess it'd be okay to. I don't think you can probe these. What I think it's pretty obvious is they're so big that if it popped, it'd all be black in there. So I think you just visually look at these kind that have huge areas on them, and look for obvious damage in there. I think that's why they're so big. I guess that's pretty much about it. Okay, I kind of wanted to show you what it would look like if you had a fuse that needed to be powered up by your ignition. I actually have the ignition on, and what I did is there's a bolt right there, so that's going to be a good ground point, so I clipped on right there. So a little tip there if you're trying to find a good ground point. And so I have the ignition on right now, and I'm just going to reach up and touch one of these There you go. See, the light came on. And if I touch the other side, it's kind of hard for me. Can't quite see. There we go, and I'm doing it left-handed. So that's with the ignition key on. I'm going to turn the ignition key off and pull it out so it doesn't beep at me. And all that's going to happen is, which is kind of tricky because it just basically doesn't work. So one thing I want to say is, if you have a fuse that doesn't work on both sides, that's almost 100% sure that you need to have the ignition key on. If the fuse is blown, it should work on one side, but when you jumper the other side, it won't go. So that's how you can tell if your fuse is blown. So if you have any questions, leave it in the comment below, and hopefully this little video will help you out on how to use your test light to quickly test fuses. Hey, real quick, I thought I'd show you kind of what it looks like if you have a blown fuse. So again, you know, I got my negative lead hooked up to the negative post on the battery, and I probe with my positive lead. So if this had a fuse across it but it was blown, it'd be open like it is now. So if you touched one side, you'd get the light, and if you touched the other side, you would not get the light. So here's a good fuse. Get the light on both sides. So if you touched it, like let's say this was a fuse, it's not, and you got no light on either side, that doesn't mean the fuse is bad. That just means that it needs to be energized. Probably have to turn on your ignition, and then, or some other components activating, but most of the time the ignition needs to be turned on. And again, if one side lights and the other side doesn't, that's how you know you have a bad fuse. So I hope all that makes sense. If you like this video helped you out, give me a thumbs up. If you subscribe, you'll see more videos as they come out. Thank you for watching.